In this video, I'm going to show you how to create this drawing of a building in 2 points perspective, step by step.
Oh yeah!
To help make this easy for you, because I know that you like things that are easy, I'm going to give you this perspective grid that includes a basic form as a starting point. I've also included some images of each stage so that you can jump ahead and skip some parts if you want to. There's a link in the description that will take you to a landing page. Just enter your email address and you'll receive a link to download this. Now I suggest printing out this grid, or for those of you who create art digitally, you can just save the image and import it into whatever software you are using to draw. So here I have the perspective grid that at this point you should have downloaded, and as I said, print this out if you have the means to do so, because what I like to do and what I'm going to do here is trace this grid onto some paper. To do this, I use this light panel so that I can easily see those grid lines below, but I'll start by outlining the building's basic form and then the grid lines. Now these grid lines are very helpful when it comes to drawing in perspective because it helps you get a better idea of where you should direct the lines that you draw in perspective. As you probably already know, because we are drawing in 2 points perspective here, there'll be two sets of lines converging to two vanishing points. These vanishing points will exist on this horizon line somewhere, and for this example, the horizon line is placed so that it's level with the bottom of the building. Remember, this is also our eye level, and so we will be looking up at this building that we are drawing. So, the grid has been drawn out and we now have a basic form to start developing. Now I'm going to start with the roof, and through the power of editing, I'll be able to highlight what it is that I'm doing. So along the ridge of this roof, I'll extend out a line at either end like so, and this represents how much I want the roof to overhang the building. Now along the side at either end, from the end of those smaller lines, I'll draw down two lines, following the same angle of the roof. I also extend these further out at the front. Finally, connect these up to finish constructing a plane which is sitting on top of the building here. Now we need to do the same at the other side of the roof, but because of the angle this building is being viewed on, we won't see much of it, only this side of the roof. Regardless, we'll draw through this basic form and drop down a line at either side. To see where we should end these lines, I use my ruler and line it up in perspective, because I want the overhang for this to be the same as the section at the front. Let's connect that up, and there we go. On this building, there's also this smaller section at the front which also includes a sloping roof, so I will also add a plane on top of that by repeating what we had just done. The next step is to give these planes some thickness, and to do that I'll start by extending up a line at either side which represents the thickness of these planes. I connect those up, and then again, following that same angle, I extend up some lines to the top of the roof. Before connecting these up at the top, let's bring that line across to the other side like so. Now we can connect these up, and there we go, we have a nice simple pitched roof with an overhang. Again, let's do the same for the smaller roof down here. Okay, so we could leave the roof as it is here and move on to another section. However, if you look at a lot of buildings in Japan, hang on, did I even mention we was drawing a Japanese style building here? Anyways, a lot of the roofs on those buildings are built in layers. They'll sometimes have another section on top, and so we are going to try and do the same here by literally just repeating what we have just done in order to draw another overhanging plane on top of this one. So starting from this side, I'll draw a line down here and then project this across the front, up the other side, and then along the top. Now because there's quite a few lines we have to look at, this can get confusing, but again, through the power of editing, I can highlight which ones we are drawing. Let's drop this down at the other side the same way as before. Okay, so again, let's do the same for the smaller roof. And then again, we need to add some thickness to these planes and extrude them up, but this time we don't want to give them as much thickness. Instead, here I'll wrap a line around the building, establishing that thickness, and then I can draw this across. The same can be done for the roof down here, and you'll notice now that these roofs have a fairly big overhang, which is good. That's the style we are going for. So I'm going to leave the roof like that for now, and we'll develop it at a later stage, because at this stage we are constructing the building, and the purpose of this is to draw in the basic forms and position everything that we will be developing in further detail later. So, to continue, on top of this section, I'll extend up this line to around here, and then from the top of that, take a line back to the wall. I then bring this across. Again, remember that as you draw these lines, you want to make sure that they are following the direction of the grid lines. I then take this back to that wall to finish constructing a box for what will be a balcony on this building. Now at the very front here, I'll divide up this plane by drawing 2 diagonal lines from each corner. This allows me to find the centre where I can add a vertical halfway line. This is a useful technique because it helps us position things centrally whilst accounting for the convergence that occurs when drawing in perspective. Across the top, if I extend a line along here, it will eventually meet one of those diagonal lines, and where it does will be where I can drop down another line. If I extend this one so that it meets this diagonal line at this side also, then I can drop down a line at this side as well. And then I've centrally positioned what will be the door over an opening at the front of this building. Now, let's say that this entrance will be comprised of 4 separate sliding doors. Well, I can divide half of this plane again by drawing in another set of diagonal lines to find the centre, and then the same can be done at the other side as well. Notice how these doors seem to reduce in size, and that, as we learn in my simple perspective video, is called diminution. Objects start to appear smaller as they recede into the distance. So I'm going to do the same at the front of this building up here, except this will be a smaller opening. Again, with 2 diagonal lines, I can find that centre line, and then I draw in a line across the top, which meets those 2 diagonals. Extend a line down at either side, and there we go. Again, as I said, we'll be outlining these in more detail in the next stage. Now, the next thing that we want to do here is draw a smaller window at the side of the building. And when drawing this at this side of the building, your lines will be directed to that left vanishing point. I also want the top of this window to be level with the top of the opening that we've just drawn at the front, and that's easily done by wrapping a line from the top of this around the building like so. Here I'll draw in that smaller window. I'll do the same for a door at this side as well. I'll extend a line across from the doors at the front and then back around here. Now I can extend up 2 lines to outline another single door at this side. So that is all of the windows and doors positioned on the face of the building. Now we are going to start drawing and boxing out some of the objects around the building. Now quickly, if we take a look at the final image here, what we are in the process of drawing, you'll notice that these vending machines are sat on a small platform, and so that's what I'll draw here. Because this is so close to the horizon line, it's pretty much horizontal. To begin constructing a rectangular box for the vending machines, I'll draw out its side plane first. I'll make this roughly the same height as that door there as well. I then draw a line across and then drop a line down. And just like that, we have a vending machine drawn out, but we want 2 of them and we need them to be the same size. To do this, I will show you another simple technique for duplicating planes in perspective. Here you can see that I've extended out this top edge. Then I'll divide this front plane with 2 diagonal lines as we've done before. This allows me to draw in a horizontal dividing line. And then from the bottom corner of this plane, I extend a line through that point at which that dividing line meets the edge of the plane that I'm duplicating. And I continue to extend this until it meets the lines extending out from the top. At this point I can drop a line down for the edge of a duplicated plane. And there we go, that is 2 vending machines, but at the moment there's no space in between them, but we'll sort that out when it comes to outlining the drawing. Okay, so we've got something that looks quite good now, but there's still a few more boxes to construct. Here I will draw one at the front of the building at this side, and then at the other side I will construct a bigger box, and inside this one, at both of its side planes, I draw in a triangle. and connect those up at the top. This will be some kind of shop sign, I'm not sure yet. Next to this, I construct another small box that will be an air conditioning unit. Again, if you've been to Japan, you'll have seen a lot of these. There is as much air conditioning units as there are vending machines. Speaking of vending machines, next to these I will draw in a box for a bin. They're usually seen next to those. And finally, at the back of the building here, I'll outline a set of stairs. And I do this by firstly drawing out the side plane, and then from each of these steps I extend a line in perspective to give them some depth. Alongside these, I'll also draw in a wall like so. Okay, we are almost done. The last thing I'll do here is draw in a sign that is positioned on top of this sloping roof at the front. To position this in the centre, I'll divide this plane of the box we had drawn for the balcony to find its centre, and then that centre line is something that I can bring down that sloping roof. This gives me a better sense of where to draw in this sign, which for now will be a simple rectangular plane. And there we go, we have finished constructing this building. Hopefully you are following along and you have gotten to this stage and your drawing looks something like this. I have also included this drawing as it is here as a separate image for you to use as reference, so when you download the grid you'll also receive that. So now it is time to move on to the next stage, which is the outlining stage. Now it's a bit harder for me to explain every single thing I do here, but I'll do my best to describe the process as simply as possible. So again, let's start at the roof, and I'm going to come to the front of this, and along this line I'm going to draw a wavy line to outline a metal roof or even a tiled roof. Try to keep these small bumps that I'm drawing here consistent in size. Something like this. Now from the top of each of these I'm going to draw a line up from that at the same angle as the roof. You can do this freehand or use a ruler to assist you. Then along the top where these lines meet the ridge, connect these up with another wavy line. I've also created a bolder outline along the ridge of the roof. That's one thing that you'll notice here, is that now that the drawing has been constructed, I start to apply more pressure with the pencil to create bolder, more permanent lines. So that's the roof, and before I forget I'm going to outline a drainage pipe along the front of it here, at this side. I'll draw this pipe down from the gutter so that it turns into and runs down the side of the building. When it gets to around this point, I'll have it turn and angle down to this smaller section at the front. At either edge of the side of the building, I offset a line, and then at the very centre of this plane, I drop down two lines close together to outline another, what is going to be like a timber batten for a wooden wall that looks something like this. You see this on many older, more traditional Japanese buildings, and so we'll outline the wooden tiles between these lines later. For now, in between this centre batten and the ones at the edge, just draw in another so that it is divided up like so. I'll probably divide this up further, but for now let's move on. And we'll move on to these objects below here, starting with the door, for which I'll outline a window. Here I outline the bin and create two small holes at the front of it, and for the vending machines, these are usually covered in posters and other details, but seeing as they are quite small in our drawing here, I'm going to keep it simple and draw in the window for the vending machine, and below that I'll draw out a few squares for the other features. Now moving back up to this wall here, I can add some horizontal dividing lines for these wooden tiles. Now I say horizontal because in reality they would be, but when drawing in perspective, these parallel lines would converge to that left vanishing point. Again, use the grid to help you do that. I had only lightly drawn these in at first to make sure that I was happy with them, but now I can go over them again, make them stand out. Also, an important step in making these look three-dimensional is to create a slightly angled line at the edge that meets the vertical timbers. The edge that we'd see from this point of view. And that, as you can see, makes a big difference. I'll outline this window frame and then move to these stairs, which don't really need much more doing to them. We've now outlined this side of the building, and so now it's time to move onto the front, starting with what will be the balcony, and we've got this box to work within. Along the top of the box, I'll outline the top of the railing, and then move down to outline another section. And you can make this appear however you want, by the way. You don't have to draw everything so that it looks exactly the same as my drawing here. In fact, before we finish drawing that in, I should probably get this smaller roof drawn in, seeing as it comes into contact with that. I approach this roof the same way as the last one. Create that nice wavy line along the front, then from each of these draw a line up to the top at the same angle as the roof. Then along the top, connect these up with some more angled lines. Also along the top of this ridge, draw in some dividing lines which curve around this section like so. Now I can finish up dividing this railing for the balcony. What's the actual term for these? I'm not sure, but it looks good. I also add a bolder outline around the edge of this sign. Okay, so now it's time to outline this window in detail, or actually this would be a door onto the balcony, wouldn't it? Anyways, to do this I'm going to start by insetting this door into the face of the building by creating a visible edge at this side and also around the top. I've already got my vertical centre line there from when I had divided that up, so here I'll start to outline the window frames at either side, and then I continue to divide this up further by simply continuing to halve these sections. Now a useful tip here is to create a bolder outline on the inside edge of each of the window panes, only around the edges that we'd see from this angle, and this helps to give it some depth. Now I want to continue that same wooden wall pattern along this section at the front here, so to do that I start at either side of the window. I then draw in another vertical line at that halfway point between that and the side of the building, and then above the window I also add some more divisions. This time the horizontal lines will converge to the right vanishing point, so use the grid lines to help you direct these, but also make sure you continue to follow the same divisions around from that other side. Again, work over these once you are happy with them and create that tapered line at the edges. So we are making some good progress here. I'll quickly add some detail to this air conditioning unit before finishing off the front of the building. So for this doorway here, let's outline a set of wooden sliding doors, and to make this a bit more interesting, let's have these doors be open. Now I've already got my 4 sections divided up from when I had constructed the image, but if I want this door to be open, then the 2 doors at the middle need to come across and overlap the ones at the edges. To do this, I can just find the halfway line again, and this will be the outlines for these doors. Now in terms of detail, I'm making this up as I go along, but again just divide up the windows however you please. I'll do this so that it looks quite similar to the set of doors above. It's nice to keep things consistent. Okay, so I'm happy with those doors. I'll also add a few extra details at the front here, like this box on the wall. I'm not sure what that might be, but on this side I'll also outline what could be like a poster or another sign of some sort. And there we go, we have now finished outlining this building, and it's looking good, it looks neat. So at this stage, now that we have our outlines, we can move on to rendering. However, I suppose this stage is optional. You might want to keep the drawing as it is, and so if that's the case, then you're done now, so congratulations. But if you're familiar with my work, then you'll know that I like to render my drawings in pencil, and so that's what I'm going to do here. So if you are following along with this video, then I assume that you'll be rendering the drawing in pencil as well. Now this stage is probably the most time consuming, and so here I'll be speeding this up in certain areas. For those who are interested, I'm using some grade 2B lead in this pencil, and this allows me to create a whole range of different shades by simply adjusting the amount of pressure I apply. A good video that might be useful to you if you are interested in learning more about how I render my drawings like this is this video. This was titled Master the Pencil, 2 Methods for Control, in which I discuss the 2 main things that I consider when rendering a drawing this way. These are 1. The way that I move the pencil, and 2. The amount of pressure I apply. Adjusting these 2 things the way that I do here allows you to create all kinds of textures and details. For the wooden wall at the side of the building, you'll notice that I added some darker shading where each tile overlaps the other. Similar to that tapered line that we had added at the side when outlining the drawing, this helps to make these appear more three-dimensional. I apply a consistent shade over the top of most things that are drawn out here. For these vending machines, you'll notice that I shade in these smaller details so that they are darker and more distinct. I even add some more detail here by drawing in some of the shelves and then some rectangles for the drinks that would sit on them. It's easy to make these elements stand out if you apply more pressure with the pencil when shading them in, or vice versa. The darker areas will easily stand out from the lighter areas. Like for this drainage pipe, I shade this in so it's a lot darker in comparison to the wall it's against. You have to find a balance between these different values in the image. For the roof, I start by shading in the sections underneath our wavy line, and then I work over the lines that I had already outlined whilst also applying a consistent shade across here. When I move down to the railing for the balcony, I want this to be a lot darker so that again it stands out from the wall behind it. I'll make this the same shade as the drainage pipe. The same shadows are added under these wooden tiles on the wall at the front. Also notice how I choose to shade in the glass window panes. This is more of a personal preference, but I think it looks better than just leaving that blank, and I just have to outline that inner edge around the frame again. But the frames stand out more, seeing as it's a lot lighter in comparison. For the smaller roof down here, I do the same as I did for the one above, but I also add a bit of a darker shade along the dividing lines from each of these, let's say, bumps, right? I imagine this to be like some corrugated metal. This entire section at the front of the building just needs a light shade over it. I also add some detail to this poster here, and then the triangular shop sign at the front there. Because I'm drawing at quite a small scale, I intentionally keep all of this very simple. The doors at the front are rendered in a similar way to the doors above. Again, I shade in those window panes, and I also shade in the gap between the doors there. So we are almost done here. The last step is to add some shadows. Now, I want the light, the imaginary light, to be coming from the right hand side from above. Let's imagine the sun shining down on the front of this building. That would mean that this entire left hand side of the building would be in shadow. And so here, I apply some consistent pressure with the pencil as I shade over all of this. And that really helps to make the drawing appear more three-dimensional, which is, as many of you will know, the purpose of drawing in perspective. Anyways, a big round of applause for you because we are now finished. So that's my typical process when it comes to creating a drawing of a building in perspective like this. Now, as I said, if you enjoy this stuff, like I do, then you might be interested in checking out my Patreon page, where I create a new tutorial of a building each and every month. I also provide a perspective grid and many reference images to help you. Also, if you want to learn how to draw in perspective so that you can create your own drawings of anything you can imagine, then be sure to check out my Simple Perspective series. With that being said, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.